Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the Giza pyramid. I want to talk about how it's a power plant. Down at the bottom of the Giza pyramid, there was a water separator, an H2O generator. It would separate water into hydrogen and oxygen. Then it would send these hydrogen and oxygen up through the tunnel. Now it would get to a place called the gas trap. It would allow hydrogen to go past it, but it would capture the oxygen and try to send it up the tube. At first, the oxygen won't go up the tube until the hydrogen presses it up the shaft. Now, as the hydrogen is flowing all up into the upper area of the descending chamber, it's going to rise up there. And then as it pressurizes up there, it's going to push back down until it hits the oxygen. Now, once it hits the oxygen, it's going to push the oxygen up to the well and up into the ascending corridor and the grand gallery. So now, once you have oxygen flowing up there, it will all push and fill up that space. Now, it shouldn't fill up the queen space because the queen space has no ventilation shaft open, so it can't push the gas into that room. It can push it on up to the king's chamber because it has open ventilation to allow the air out to replace it with the oxygen that is putting in there. So now all that stuff is filling up, right? And once the oxygen gets all the way up to the king's chamber and is flowing out up through the ventilation, before it gets out of the pyramid, it will start pressurizing so much up at the bottom that the hydrogen will start pushing up the granite plugs. Now, once it pushes up the granite plugs so far, it will let the hydrogen gas go through, and it will let any water that's inside that area come out, because there will be a little bit of water that will collect in that area. So while the hydrogen gas is pushing all through there, it's going to mix in with some oxygen as it goes through, because it's going to be swooshing in, and this oxygen won't even have time to come out. So it's going to be pushing this oxygen right with it, right up into the gallery, and it's going to flow up to the gallery and go to the ceiling. And as you can see, the ceiling is like an upside down waterbed for gas. It will put it all toward the center so it flows down a riverbed right there. Now, as it gets down to the end of the gallery, it starts collecting and it's building a pocket up, and it'll start seeping underneath the wall toward the door that the oxygen that's already seeping into. So now you got hydrogen and oxygen at the king's door ready to go in. Now you got these little tube holes here. I'm calling them the orifices. It pushes the oxygen and the hydrogen into the orifices, these little slots that are running beside the door in the king's chamber. They push it through the orifices and pushes it in to the king's chamber. Now the oxygen's already in there. It's lower on the ground. Now it needs to fill in with hydrogen. And this is a good placement for the door because it has the arc all the way over there at the other side of the room. So hydrogen's going to come in this doorway. It's going to flow straight up to the ceiling. When it's flowing straight up to the ceiling, any air that doesn't need to be in there will start pushing out the airways, the air vents. So it will be just hydrogen and oxygen in that room. Now, once the hydrogen fills up the ceiling, it's going to start creeping down toward the oxygen. The oxygen is already down there level with the arc. Once the hydrogen comes down to the arc as well, then it ignites. Now, this is the reason for the king door. They want that explosion to stay inside the king's chamber. So then the king's chamber explodes, causing this huge pressure buildup inside of it, ricocheting all the way up, straight through all of them stones that are above it, causing a massive amount of electricity. Now this electricity will flow to the arcs and keep recharging them. And then along with this electricity, I think with having this generated electricity is going to now attract lightning, with it being in a pyramid shape, having an insulator on the outside and a top piece. This is going to be attracting lightning now. So lightning is going to come down, hit the top of this peak, and create even more electricity. It will amplify it. So now you got a bunch of water in here. So the water is going to flow out underneath the king's doors. It's going to flow down the gallery chamber, and it's going to flow down to the queen's chamber. Some of it might go toward the ascending chamber, but I doubt any of it would go down the well shaft, as it will be pushing oxygen up through and blowing it away from that hole. So most of it's going to go down to the queen's chamber, which will have a ark inside the queen's chamber that's inside the nook, and it will not be underwater this time, but above the water, but the water will be surrounding the box, which will create the water to have like a negative charge. Then this water will seep through the floor and go through the sand and any voids to get back to the bottom of the chamber and be recycled to be changed into hydrogen and oxygen again, which would make it where we would hardly use any water at all to run this thing. On top of it, the power output it would give is incredible. So, as you can see in my pictures here, you can see where I put the queen box and where the box is in the lower chamber, and everybody knows where the king's chamber box is, of course. And we could really have some major power things. Now, for my ending here, though, I would like to talk about some modifications that probably could be used. And that would be, it seems like it backfires, which it has a safety issue. Safety, whenever it backfires, it can close up the granite blocks at the bottom, and then it will also not backfire through the well tunnel, because it will be only oxygen in that tunnel, and it can't burn if it doesn't have fuel. And that would be a reason for that open spot in that tunnel. It'd be filled with oxygen, and it would guarantee that a blast wouldn't burn its way through. So it would stop there. It wouldn't allow it through. So I see that they had safeties in place for the blast back. And then also with the queen's chamber, it has to have somewhere for this compressed air to go. So it has a check valve in their vents. If it blows back through, it will blow out into the queen's chamber and go into a void, I think, but without actually seeing more evidence on that, I can't really tell you. It goes into the void. But any extra hydrogen that would get blown into the queen's chamber would get burned up by the second arc that's inside there. It would ignite anything left over as byproduct. So that way it's only blowing hot air up through those check valves. But as you can see in my last thing here, you can see that whenever it backfires, it seems to be blowing against the king's chamber and pushing it backwards, which it probably would after blowing amount of fuel it did within the ascending corridor and the gallery. That's a lot of fuel. So I see this thing making a lot of energy under the compression it would have of having a hydrogen bomb in the middle of it. I really hope you like my videos. This is my first video ever. I know it's horrible and I'm very bad at it right now. But hopefully I'll get better at it and we can have better videos. And if you do like this video, please like and subscribe so that way I can become a YouTuber and make more of these videos. But above all, this video is mainly for information so that we can have a better power plant that will give us enough energy for what we're consuming, because we need more energy than we're making. And we can't be producing more coal and oil and everything. We need an energy source that is reliable and is not going to take up all our resources. And I think this is the key. It really is. It's not hard. It'll recycle its own water. And you can only imagine the voltage that's going to come out of this thing. I would think that a pyramid could almost power a whole continent probably. It'd probably have enough energy to power a whole continent. So, I guess we'll find out one day maybe and see if it happens. Thank you and have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Oh, before I go, we do need to add a few more things to this. For one, it takes salt water to separate into hydrogen and oxygen. And I believe the people that built this pyramid knew that our ocean levels would go up and down as much as they do. And I believe that when they built this pyramid, the ocean level was at a pretty good peak at the time. So they built it on the edge of the ocean there, or the sea, I guess, is what it'd be called. But it's still salty. It'd be salty. But eventually that goes down, and then you had all that Egypt and stuff. So, and all them people living in that green spot. As you can see how green it is in that area. But when you do a flood map, you see that the flood map will cover the whole Egypt area. That whole city there, it's just covered all the way up to the pyramid. So, and then they probably would get their water from that. But after the water goes down, they would have to have a plan B. Well, since the plan B would make a salt lake. And a salt lake that would carry a tunnel to underneath the pyramid and create a salt spring for the pyramid. So that way it's constantly getting salt water to feed it until the next flood. They would have to know how big that lake needs to be to last 25 years for the next flood so it don't dry up. And on top of that, with talking about the flood, and they already found the salt spring. They found a salt spring underneath in those tunnels, underneath the pyramids already in that area. So they have the spring, and they have a lake somewhere. We don't know if it has a tunnel from it or not, but I'm thinking it does. Now, speaking of the flood, I think I know how this thing stopped working. One year we had a huge flood that covered the pyramids. I would say Atlantis was true with the way they talked about mining an island. When you mine an island, how strong will that island be after you mine so far? Wouldn't it weaken it? So it's possible we have an island out there in the ocean. They mined out the center of it, taking out all the good stone and stuff that they wanted to use to build their city and trade off and everything. And then an earthquake happened. and we were already in a flood stage. We were already at a peak in the flood. And I think they knew that their island was going to collapse. So they did warn some people. As you can see, Moses was warned, or Noah. Noah was warned, and he built a boat. And whoever else they warned. And then the island ended up collapsing with an earthquake. An earthquake happened. It took the island down. It went into the water. Now, when that island went down in the water, this water had to go somewhere. So our water level jumped up a bit. It jumped over the pyramid height by what some of these old tablets say. So if it jumped over the pyramid high enough that it covered it, and this pyramid is running this system of hydrogen and oxygen, when the water covers the holes and starts pouring into it, let's say it goes over top of it, it covers the holes immediately, starts pouring water in, doesn't even give it time to bubble out yet, and then the thing explodes inside of it. Well, it has nowhere to go. So it takes a crack into the ceiling. We wonder how such a block could crack. Well, when you cover them holes with a large amount of water and you have this hydrogen exploding in there like a bomb, well, where's it going to go? So it can't go out the Queen's chamber. So it combusts this huge amount of pressure inside there, and the only place it could push it was into the ceiling, and it ended up cracking the ceiling under so much force. So now this thing is shut down. It's not working no more. And the flood goes down, and it's just a pyramid right now. And I am sure the ancient Egyptian people that were surrounding it during that time, a land of Kim or whatever, over the years they got curious about the temple and how to get it back to working, because I'm pretty sure it had a lightning bolt on top of it. I mean, I could be wrong, maybe I am wrong, but I'm just thinking it probably attracted lightning, and so they seen this as like their god, and they wanted it back, so they tunneled inside of it and found the ark. And then they called it the Ark of Covenant. Of course, Moses ended up stealing one of them and traveling through the wilderness with it. People couldn't look at the ark because they'd go blind. They couldn't touch the ark because they'd shocked to death. Well, they didn't know they'd get shocked. They just thought it was God. God didn't like them, so he killed them. They didn't realize they're carrying a capacitor around in the wilderness. So, and that's the reason why, like when they carry it across the desert sand, it would catch a charge from the heat and the particles flowing around it. So, I really think we could probably get these pyramids figured out and get one started. It'd be great. Well, till next time, have a great day. Also, when I said 25 years per flood, I meant 25,000 years per flood cycle, is what I meant to say.